come back in. Okay, so good evening, everybody. My name is Magdalene Adenaike. I am the founder and chief executive of Music Relief Foundation. Music Relief Foundation is a youth charity, and we work with. Oh, so sorry. Okay, so good evening, everybody. My name is Magdalene Adenaike. That's what happens with technology and YouTube. So, okay. So we work with young people 11 to 25 years old, supporting them to be able to strive for greatness, to be able to look at other people who are doing great things and cause them to be able to help them to increase their aspirations for greater things, because we hear of all the negativity happening to young people, but then there are many other young people who are doing great things and they also need to be celebrated as well. So that's what we do. And the charity has been going on now for 9.5 years. In January 2021, we're looking forward to celebrating our 10th anniversary. And we've been working tirelessly behind the scene. Shana, Alice, they've been doing some great work behind the scene. And so some information in regards to what we have coming up will be coming out shortly before the end of the year. So please do look out. And we really, really appreciate every single one of you being here today to be able to support this great work. It's lovely to have you guys on board. Hi, Chantel, how you doing? Fantastic. So with that being said, I will now like to introduce Jonathan. Jonathan is the chair of Music Relief. I would like him to please unmute himself and say a welcome note to the room, and also to say one or two things in regards to mental health.
Oh, thank you very much, everyone, and welcome to this August occasion. My name is Jonathan Bob Mara, and I want to thank our CEO, Magdalene, for all the hard work. And I just want to celebrate everyone and anyone who has worked in one way or the other with Music Relief. Music Relief has been a platform for young people to unleash their potential. And it's also been a platform where young people are encouraged to aspire as to what they would like to do and work with partner with other organizations with regards just developing. As Magdalene rightly said, many a time we hear about the negative things of young people. However, there are positive things we do not celebrate about young people. And that's what Music Relief is all about, using music and other arts, other forms to encourage young people to engage, be productive, to be inspired, and to be empowered. And this is what Music Relief is all about. I've been privileged to be the chair. Magdalena said it for 9-10 years. But however, we want to move forward, and we as an organization look forward to work with partners, sponsors to see where we could go. But now the event we're talking about is mental health. We have to understand that mental health is real. And these young people have been at home for maybe a couple of months without going out. So we are also looking at where we could focus ourselves to support, engage, and help them understand the transition back to normalcy with regards to the new normal. So I think today's conversation is all about that. I know we have tremendous speakers who are going to enable us to understand. So for now, I'll just leave it at that, and I'll give you back to Magdalene. But I want to say a big thank you for just being here today. It means so much to us as an organization. I want to thank the members of the board of directors, board of trustees, and I'll leave it to Magdalene again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair. And just as Chair was speaking, Madam Mayor has just come in. Thank you so much. This is the worshipful Mayor of Croydon, Councillor Maddie Hansen, is here with us. And so, Maddie, before you come on, because you're the first speaker, we have Shana here. Shana, where I can't see on my screen. I would like Shana to just talk briefly about obviously the event this month of September that we've been working on in regards to mental health, and then I will come back and introduce Madam Mayor. So Shana, if you can just tell the room a brief about what we've been working on, especially with the launch of Safe Space and every other thing that's been happening in regards to mental health. And if you want to share one or two illustrations from your own self as well, that would be great.
So thank you everyone for joining us on board today. I really appreciate all of you being here. The whole premise of this webinar is an extension to the month campaign that we've launched, which is September, all about mental health. So we've launched a number of different services in relation to that, or as Magdalene just mentioned, Safe Space is one of them, which will be it's an online Instagram live service where we discuss a youth mental health issue every single week. So we've covered things such as gang membership, mental health and gender, so the influence of music, social media, different things that impact young people's well-being, their overall mental health with them. The whole premise of this tonight is to gather a bunch of voices from diverse perspectives. So we've got wellbeing officers, people from an education background, a consultancy role, and obviously the Madam Mayor herself will provide a unique insight into the topic from her roles and support with different organisations that she has. So I guess we should kick off and, Magdalene, as you said, introduce the Mayor and start the conversations going.
Okay, thank you so much, Shana. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to welcome Councillor Maddie Henson to please take over and speak to us. Madam Mayor, we've given you a platform to speak, please, for 15 minutes.
Okay, right. Thank you, Magdalena, and thank you so much, everybody, for being here. It's such a wide-ranging topic, but I thought there'd be kind of two perspectives I'd look at it from. First, my own perspective, and latter, what I've seen, especially in recent months. I've often been spoken in the chamber, and I've been very public during my time as mayor, that I had difficulties with my mental health a few years ago. I had a lot of issues around the same time as I was pregnant with my eldest son. I lost two of my grandparents within 10 days of each other, both to quite unpleasant and debilitating illnesses. My mum had a cancer scare, my cousin got hit by a bus, and I was very, very unwell with the pregnancy. So it was quite a challenging time. So I think my mental health was almost inevitably going to suffer given that circumstances. But I would consider myself very much in the lucky category, because I was really lucky in the sense that I had a supportive network around me. I had my husband, who was extraordinary in his ability to kind of just be level through anything is quite unique, and because my natural character does this anyway. Someone that's kind of calm and brings back the most manic and the most negative periods of my life back to some sort of level footing is quite good. And I had my mum, my sister, my mother-in-law to a limited extent. Not everybody is lucky enough to be able to have a network around them that will be able to back them up or know what the right things to say is. Let Eve alone even be able and confident to be able to open up to them in that difficulty point. And certainly that's one of the things that I've seen. I had a good enough relationship with them that I felt in a good place to be able to talk about the way I was feeling and the problems I needed and the support with. Not everybody has that relationship, but also has the self-esteem and confidence to be able to make those conversations. And I think that's part of one of the major causes of the mental health crisis is that we see where people haven't got that ability to talk. From the other perspective that I wanted to pick up on is what I've seen the effects of the last few months. There's not a single person in the world that has not been affected by what has happened in this year. From the year that wasn't, in a lot of ways, everybody has lost something, whether it's a loved one, whether it's an event that was vital to them. Hang on, I do apologise. Can you give me 30 seconds? I've got my son downstairs and I think he just knocked something over. I'm really, really, really sorry. 30 seconds, I'm sorry.
The joys of parenthood and multitasking.
Tell me about it.
Because for those of us who are parents or carers, we can definitely identify with that. So I had to actually come back into the office to kind of have some silence in there because. Okay, but on a serious note, what the Madam Mayor was actually saying is very true in regards to the losses that has taken place in this year, and so many people are grieving in multiple ways, and the some of them, unfortunately, sometimes we say don't suffer in silence, it's good to talk, but some people still feel that they don't have the opportunity to speak to somebody that would listen to them, maybe because they feel like they don't have good supportive network from family or friends or work colleagues or whomever they have around them. And Madam Mayor mentioned the fact that she lost 2 grandparents within a short frame of time, and so many of her losses. So these are things that can really take someone else, push people to the edge, and it's really terrible for that. So we really need to be not just being sympathetic, but definitely empathetic towards people's needs. So let me not talk much. Madam Mayor is back now.
Yeah, I apologise so much for that. The perils of home working, which is something I was going to come on to in itself in a moment as well. Where did I get to? Yes, there's nobody in the world that hasn't lost something as a result of the pandemic. Whether it's a loved one, whether it's an experience they're looking forward to, whether it's just a sense of freedom, a purpose, their job. Every single person has got something, at least one thing, that they can draw on that they will be suffering as a result of losing. Sorry, running up and down the stairs makes you out of breath. The result being that we have got this mental health crisis developing, because none of us have got any cultural reference to draw on for what's happened. There's nobody really alive today that can actually be able to articulate from an adult's perspective what the last pandemic felt like. The last time we had to walk down the street wearing masks, the last time we couldn't hug our loved ones. And people make a comparison with the war, but I always think that's a very poor comparison. Yes, it was a shared suffering experience, but the difference is that we could share that suffering together during the war. Someone went through a traumatic time where they lost a loved one, where they lost their business. You could hold them, you could support them, you could give them the physical contact that we thrive as a species. During a time when we're having to be social distance to save lives, we can't provide that contact. And that is then further exasperating. Sorry, you know what I'm trying to say. Exacerbating, thank you, the problems we are seeing. So when everybody talks, it's the first subject you talk about, the pandemic. It might not always be, oh, the figures I saw in the press today were this, but it will be about something that is very personal and very real to them, something that they can draw from. And I have been comparing it in my mind with my own, I grant you, very limited experience of mental health crisis. And it's like when you have lost something that you care about so deeply, it's with you all the time. It's like you're carrying it around with you. It's not always there consciously in your front of your forehead, but given any opportunity, it comes straight to the front. It's like a weight you're carrying. But that, ironically, is the time when people are at their best, because that's when they're able to make that conversation and express that pain. It becomes even more problematic if you don't have the opportunity, and bring myself back to the point where you can't actually express that pain. We're here, we can talk, if we're feeling strong enough, we can talk about the pain we felt. We can have those conversations I alluded to. Not everybody, particularly if you're young and you're trapped away from your friends, do you have that opportunity? And one example I would give is the situation and debate that's going on at the moment with young halls of residence for uni. I liked uni, it was a great time for me, but like everybody else, there are times when I felt at a really low place and I needed to go home. and more, I met my husband after the first year of uni. So I was always back and forth seeing him. I wouldn't be able to do that now. From effectively, you're trapped in your halls with people that you don't know, away from your support network. And I'm not going to comment about whether it's the right or wrong decision. I wouldn't consider myself in any way equipped to do that. But it is what then you're forced to go through is just so indicative of what we've been living through. And I'd like, obviously you asked me to talk about some of the organisations I've worked with during my time as mayor on this. I would probably pick on Home Start for most of, which is one of my chosen 3 charities. I don't know if anyone here has heard of Home Start. It was a slightly younger age group than we're traditionally looking at here, but it's indicative of what we're talking about. They work with vulnerable families with children under 5. The work they do, the befriending service, is not dissimilar from what Age UK do for our elderly residents. They look after families when they need somebody to provide that kind of just experience and that common sense and that parental role fit model, which they might not always have. And when you've just had a child, especially, or if you're going for a difficult time, you're so important. And if you're having a difficult time before February, March, that's only going to have got 100 times worse. Without the fact that Home Start were literally not allowed to then send their befriending service around to provide that practical advice. So what it's resulted in doing, having taken away these support networks, which I'm not actually saying we shouldn't have done it. I want to illustrate that everything that's been done has been done for the best. But what I am kind of coming around to say is the fact that we are going to get to the point where there's another crisis we're going to have to deal with on the back of this immediate need. So I'm kind of going from subject to subject, but it's just reflecting generally on some of the experiences I've seen. The last thing I would probably leave you with is I'll talk about my oldest son's best friend. She is a daughter in a family of 4. They had a first floor, 2-bedroom flat, no garden, and they were not near a park. They had 5 months of that. And she was from the mother was from at college training to be a nurse, so she literally couldn't even get another job because she was trying to provide a service which was going to be absolutely vital to us. So there's no escape from that for the 4 of them. Okay, thank you. I hope that was all right, Magdalena.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That was really insightful. And we're going to keep Q&A towards the end so that way we can get as many people to speak, and then we'll come back to the Q&A. But thank you so much for everything you've said. Shana, do you want to introduce the next speaker, please?
So our next speaker will be Fleur Shorthouse-Hemming. So what we'll do is I'll ask you to introduce yourself, and then we can do a question afterwards, if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm a teacher. I've been teaching philosophy at A level for 20 years, over 20 years. And but I've taught loads of other subjects as well. I've taught level 2 students thinking and reasoning, and level 3 students critical thinking and anthropology and religious studies, but mainly I teach philosophy. And so Shana, are you going to ask me a question, or shall I just talk about what I've kind of prepared?
Yeah, so I'll just ask you a question if that's okay, but okay. Just a short introduction a bit about your background and teaching.
Oh yeah, okay. Sorry, I also forgot to say that I've been telling traditional stories for over 20 years as well. So yeah, so I teach philosophy and tell stories.
So I guess your obviously primary role is teaching perspective onto the issue and helping and supporting students. So in your opinion, do you think schools are doing enough to put mental health at the forefront? Is there anything that can be done post-COVID-19 to help support students? And from your teaching experience, what strategies have you found useful in supporting students' mental health?
Oh, okay, thanks. In answer to the question about whether I think schools are doing enough about putting mental health as a priority, well, I've got two answers to that, yes and no. Okay, so yes, in a way, because every single school has a mental health policy, and the governors of the school and the head teacher and all of the senior management and all of the teachers and all of the support staff are aware of that, as well as all of the teachers' unions and the government and people in local government. And so there are many people whose job it is to help young people with mental health difficulties. Okay. And so in a way, yes, you know, in theory, it looks like there is a lot being done for people who are experiencing mental health difficulties. And when I think about my own college, I think of the subject tutors and how they try to speak to students before and after lessons. And we've got a whole tutoring system as well, where we try to give a lot of pastoral care to our students, and there's a student mentoring system where we get students to help students, and there's buddy schemes, and we have mental health first aiders, and we've got a well-being room. So you see, there are some things in my college, and but whether those things are available in other colleges, obviously I don't know, but I'd like to explain to you how our Wellbeing Centre came about. And that's because we had a mental health crisis at my college, because there were so many people with difficulties and they were going into the additional support centre, and the additional support teachers are trained to help with dyslexia and dyspraxia and ADHD and all that kind of thing. So all of the students with educational needs get their help from educational additional support workers, and there wasn't anybody to help all of these students with the mental health difficulties. And so the students with the mental health difficulties were also going to additional support, and there just was not enough staff to help them. And so that's why it's a very new initiative at my college to have this wellbeing centre. Okay, so the thing is, even though there are many policies, etc., and there might be many places in institutions, the people who need help might not get it when they actually need it. Okay, so you were talking about, you also mentioned strategies. So what can we do about all of this? And the most important thing for young people is that what they must do is ask for help when they need it. And sometimes it's very difficult for you to recognize that you need help. And that's because when these mental health difficulties emerge, they're young people. So often they emerge for the first time and they might not know what's happening, and they might not really know what to do. So the thing is that if you've got a hunch that you've got a mental health difficulty, you have to start asking, and you have to build the relationships, because in my experience, it's students who seek out help. They're the ones that get it. Okay, and interestingly, it might sometimes be help from people that you weren't really expecting to be helpful. It might actually be those kind of annoying bossy teachers who always seem busy, that if you actually get a 10-minute appointment with them, then they're the ones who are actually incredibly good to get help from. So sometimes you get help from places that you're not really expecting. Okay, yeah, so shall I talk a little bit more about strategies?
Yeah, I think that'd be very good to kind of hear your opinion on that and what you...
Yeah, cool. So well, strategies for how people can access help, and what young people need to think about if they've got mental health difficulties, I think are to do with the broad things like fitness and diet and sleep, but also I think it's really, really important to have a creative outlet. And that's why this charity is so important, because it's encouraging young people to recognise the healing and mental health sort of well-being properties of collaborating on creative projects. So I think that is really important. I also think that friendship is absolutely essential. So my heart was kind of breaking when Maddie was talking about isolation of young people, and I do really worry about that myself, that it might be difficult to cultivate friendships under the COVID situation. So friendship is something that must be nurtured and taken very, very seriously, and also seeking out beauty. And so something else I found quite upsetting about what Maddie was saying when she was talking about some people who were isolating, and it was very difficult for them to get out of the house and to actually just be in a place where they could seek out some kind of beauty. And I think you know, that's very difficult. So, but there are ways of doing this, and I think it's my job as a teacher, and it's our job as a sort of group of people who care about young people, to help them sort of find those beautiful things, you know, be it in beautiful friendships and beautiful music, and it doesn't just have to be visual beauty. Okay, so
I think you raised some very interesting points there. It'd be very good to kind of elaborate that in the Q&A for the panel about how we can encourage young people to open up, and what, you know, we can do in schools or even for adults in work to feel comfortable talking about mental health.
Okay.
But I think we'll for the time being move on to the next speaker, which will be Kirit Mystery and Fitzroy as well. So Kirit, if you'd like to just introduce yourself to the rest of the panel.
Hi, thank you for the invitation. My name is Kirit Mystery. I'm the service manager here at the Adar mental health charity. We're a user-led charity based in Leicester. We've been around for 30 years, and currently we're the only BME mental health charity left in Leicester. So from 5, we're the only one, and the only one that covers Leicestershire that is not commissioned by our local public health or NHS CCG. So just to put that in context, all of our funding is coming from the lottery, from contracts, from Lloyd Foundation, and from service user direct payments. So we've been around for 30 years. So that's the context of the landscape we currently operate in. So I just want to set that as the starting point. And we do have culturally specific counselling, linguistic services that we offer. We've got an employment health and wellbeing program. We've got a support group, which is for our long-standing clients that we've been with us for many years. And on top of that, we've got a BME specific advocacy service that's funded through the Lloyd Foundation. We've had some challenges through COVID, and obviously that's enabled us to change the way we offer our services. We've continued throughout, but we've had to look at, you know, doorstep visits to some of our clients who've been shielding. We've had to look at it from a telephone-based counselling right through to FaceTime, WhatsApp, video calling, and Zoom for those who could access that. But we also have provided support to particularly women and men who have been trafficked through trafficking and modern slavery, through a contract that we also provide culturally sensitive counselling. But what we've seen throughout COVID is the increase of domestic abuse, and that's enabled us to secure some more funding via the Ministry of Justice through our local police crime commission. So we're quite fortunate to be able to have that, to provide, again, counselling support services to particularly BME, Black, Asian, minority communities, women and men, but predominantly women who've been going through some domestic abuse services. So that's the kind of introduction to the organisation. I've worked in drugs, alcohol, mental health. I've also worked on, some of you might be aware, we had the Delivering Race Equality in Mental Health programme that was in 2005 to 2010. That was the first time the government actually prioritised race equality. But I know you're going to come on to some of the questions on government, so I'm going to stop there.
If you go start with the questions on government first. In terms of government policies, like what do you think, in your opinion, needs to be done to address the mental health crisis?
So certainly we've got the 5-year forward view, we've got the NHS mental health current implementation strategy, which we've had since 2019 going right through to 2024. The challenge we have as being a user-led organization is that the patient, the public involvement in some of these strategies tends to be the missing element. So governments, across the country, local authorities, their inconsistency in terms of their engagement strategy or engagement, how they like the words co-production, co-design, but really it's about that meaningful engagement, and that's where sometimes we've not got it right. And hence I talk from a culturally and a race equality perspective, because that's the area that seems to be poorly funded, but it's higher need. So if we look at how people from those communities access services, particularly from Black, African, Caribbean communities, their access route to mental health services tends to be at crisis or through criminal justice routes. And again, so the government strategy is there. We just need to get the government and the authorities to engage more, so that those strategies can be actually not just paper strategies, but actually co-implemented by working with organizations, patients, and communities as well. The other thing I'd like to share is quite a recent strategy that was a mapping survey that was done by a newly organization called BAME, and they produced a national mapping of BME mental health services, which was just done in June. But again, we found that they found only 51 currently around the country. There's 51 mental health BME-led services. So again, what the government needs to be looking at is how do they commission more equitable services, because what tends to happen, like we found out in Leicester, is the national organizations have won the tenders. So it means local specialist organizations like ours and around the country have enabled to compete with smaller charities who'll be able to maybe have a culturally competent approach to their services and their engagement. So that's one thing I'd like to say. And from the policy angle as well, is we've got the previous speaker spoke about children and young people, and we're seeing again the CAMS services. They're actually in high demand of huge waiting lists. So what tends to happen is, particularly in high populated areas where there are children from BAME communities, that it's harder for them to access specialist mental health services from the CAMS route. And we're seeing now, in terms of some schools have extra resources been given, but that's not consistent across the country. So I think government from the education department also needs to look at that. But we need to have a more joined up. We've got a strategy, but my experience is we need to join up more of those departmental strategies. So it's not just NHS, but it's education, it's criminal justice, working more joined up.
I definitely think collaboration with different organisations would be key to kind of addressing the mental health crisis. So you obviously work with BME communities. In your opinion, is there a difference between ethnic minorities in terms of the mental health issues? And could you elaborate on why that might be the case, like different factors influencing that?
Sure. So I think the mental health is a stigma across communities. So that's, we've got stigma, but when it comes to particularly the Black communities, that's certainly a bit more sensitive and more from a cultural context. Not many people want other people knowing about their business, or if they've got mental health challenges, that's something that doesn't come out until, as I said, crisis, or until they've actually, their health is deteriorated. So we still need to tackle stigma, taboo within our communities. And as a result of that stigma and taboo, that then impacts on whether the right services are available for them to access. So I keep going on about culturally sensitive, linguistic, and appropriateness, is because that's what we have to work within the context of that community we're trying to provide a service for. A generic one-size-fits-all service doesn't work. So we need to be looking at more services that will be able to work with different communities across the board. And I think, you know, there is more discussions at the moment. Is BAME the right terminology? If it's black and brown, or for me, it's about a service that's going to meet the needs of the local demographic population it's serving. So if it's high populations, that's the local community need to have people from that delivering in the mainstream services have to come from those communities. And we're seeing a lack of diversity within workforce. Then we're seeing a lack of community organizations and charities being commissioned because, as I said, we can't compete, but we may be able to better provide the service because our service, for example, we provide linguistic counseling support. We've got male, female. So we've got to offer people a choice of what they need to meet their needs. And I think that's where the difference has to come in terms of we have to provide a service that's going to meet the needs of the people we're trying to serve.
No, I think that's definitely key. Like, obviously different strategies work for different people, and mental health doesn't discriminate. And hopefully conversations like this will, you know, if we are talking about it more often, it does help, you know, end that discrimination and people feel more comfortable to talk about it, open up about their own issues.
And finally, I think before, you know, your event is timely because next week is World Mental Health Day. 10th of October is World Mental Health Day. This year's theme is quite timely because it's about investing and accessing. That's the theme. So certainly from our organization and we're going to be actually trying to ensure a campaign that we want to start is that we want better investment and access to Black, Asian mental health services. And that has to be not just in Leicester, but we've got to make sure that's across the UK, wherever, you know, because that's the only way. We've got to use these days, not just symbolically, but we've got to look at it in terms of how are our communities engaging with the decision makers in the locality. So it's glad we've got the mayor here from Croydon. You know, you've got an excellent BME network there that does some very good work. Because I have a number of different hats, but I'm not going to go into them. But it's useful that, you know, we've got to engage with those communities and help them shape, and those organizations shape local services. So I'm going to shut up there because the main person you want to hear from is Fitzroy, who's here with me. So thank you.
Yeah, if we pass the floor over to Fitzroy, could you elaborate a little bit more on your story and your experiences with mental health and any strategies you found useful in your recovery?
Hi, my name is Fitzroy. Well, my story is a complex one. I didn't realize I was suffering from mental health until I actually read about it and saw some of the symptoms. And then I realized I had them. Anxiety and depression. And not having no one to talk about was the main crux of the problem because I felt so alone. So I was, you know, I just turned to drinking, drugs, lack of sleep, didn't have nobody to talk to. And it culminated with me trying to take my life 3 times. So that's my story, basically. It's not as bad now because I'm over it. I've realized that I've started to open up. I'm amazed that I'm talking to you now because I wouldn't talk. I would keep everything in. So this is massive. As you can see, I'm a bit shy and nervous, but yeah, that's part of my story. I'm doing a lot better now. So yeah, if it wasn't for Adar, then I don't know where I would be. That's the God's honest truth. Because the amount of times I phoned the hospital or went to the hospital and I didn't get the help, I just got put in a box, basically. And not knowing that Adar was 5 doors away from my house could have saved me a lot of problems. So I'm very grateful for them and their help, the support they provided for me. Very grateful.
Your honesty. I think it takes a lot to, you know, share your story, and thank you.
Yeah.
If you're comfortable, would you maybe share a little bit about how Atar supported you?
Oh yeah, they've helped me because I get irritated. I've got a short I get anxious and irritated, so it's hard for me to talk on the phone and stuff like that. So Kirit does that for me. I have problems communicating, should I say, and he helps me with all of that. So I forgot the question now.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, I just had a brain hemorrhage the other day, so my memory is not too. I had a stroke a couple months ago. My memory is not too. I keep forgetting things.
So just that's the
What's
to
this?
attend your meetings.
Oh yeah,
Clinicians.
and he helps me attend my meetings and stuff, and give me the support that way. Because as I say, I get frustrated, especially when I feel I'm getting asked silly questions, and you know, and they help me with my budgeting, my appointments, everything, basically everything that I struggle to do as a normal person would do, because I get irritated and stuff like that. But yeah, they've helped me tremendously. If it wasn't for them, I don't know where I'd be now. What's that?
How are you coping?
Yeah, I cope with music. They say when music hits, you feel no pain.
People.
And that's me, because I'm a DJ, so I just tend to go with my music, and that helps me tremendously.
The music is definitely a very good strategy in coping with, obviously, music. We're a music charity, so they're definitely a great strategy in helping people self-express. Could be a very cathartic experience. So yeah, thank you for sharing your story with us. Conscious of the time, so if we move over to the next speaker, which will be Lucinda Powell. So if you'd like to give a quick introduction to everyone about you and your organisation.
Hi, so it's really exciting to be here. Thank you for having me. So I work in kind of fingers in number of pies, but my background is in teaching. So I taught psychology for many, many years, and I now work with schools largely, and also parents, but I work with School Mental Health Awards. So I talk to schools about the work they're doing towards mental health, but I also work with parents and through kind of company called Parent Scheme, and through just kind of freelance stuff that I do around mental health and how to support young people through secondary school as they're kind of struggling with mental health issues. So really that's kind of professionally what I do, but personally, I have 3 children and they have special educational needs, which again, for me is something that's really personal. It's a journey that I've been on, and I recognize as well that the impact that special educational needs can have on young people and on their mental health. So for me, that's something that is equally important, and all of these things play into mental health. So yes, in a nutshell, that's what I do.
I guess in your role working with students, parents, and also students and schools, have you noticed any trends in relation to mental health that you've observed through your work?
Okay, so that's a really interesting question. And when I left teaching, so I left teaching about 3 years ago. And when I left teaching, it was definitely on the rise. And you hear teachers talking about, you know, all the mental health issues that they're dealing with. So the question is actually mental health on the rise in young people, or is there something else going on? And when you do self-reports, the research suggests that what is happening is it's not so much that mental health is increasing in terms of its incidence, but it's just that people are more willing to talk about it, which is a really good thing. But at the same time, services have been cut back. So where we used to, someone would come forward and they say, you know, I'm feeling a bit low, we would be able to get them support pretty much instantly. And I think this goes back to what Kirit was saying. We could get you support. You wouldn't reach crisis point. People are coming forward, and then it's a 2-year wait before they're accessing services, at which point they are in crisis. And unless the school, I mean, some schools do have counsellors, some schools have therapists, some schools are amazing in what they provide. So you know, for some young people, there is pretty quick access, but for others, it's less easy to get those services. And particularly with COVID, obviously a lot of face-to-face stuff, which a lot of people feel quite uncomfortable doing stuff online, as I think we've heard. So that's a problem. The second kind of thing that's worth thinking about is actually, what is the mental health around COVID? Now, I've literally got back from a day's training in a school. I've been working with 17 amazing young people who are training as mental health ambassadors, which was just, honestly, it's 2 days. I'm on a complete high. But Oxford University have just released a set of research, and they've been carrying out research throughout pretty much from day one of lockdown and looking at the mental health of young people. And that research is fascinating, because what you find actually is if you lump everybody together, particularly at secondary school, the report suggests that mental health has improved. So young people have the overall improved in terms of their mental health. But that isn't, when you lump it together, that's an average, but when you start to break it down, you don't see that. So things like socioeconomic status, people who are on lower incomes, they are struggling more. And then obviously with the return to school, what are we seeing? We're seeing a spike in OCD and anorexia, I know, is kind of a pattern that's starting to emerge. So I say anorexia, like eating disorders. So that's a bit of a problem. And I'm gonna have a look, because literally this research has literally just come out. So I've literally looked at the quick findings that have been published. Yeah, primary age school children, there has been an mean increases in emotional, behavioural and restlessness and inattention difficulties. So it's interesting, because attention and restlessness have increased in both age groups, primary and secondary, which is quite interesting. Again, what we found is people with special educational needs and pre-existing mental health issues like anxiety, they have decreased over lockdown. And I don't quite know where we are at the moment, but it was sort of expected that those would be the people that we need to really keep an eye on going back into schools. So the research, in the little bit that I've read, hasn't said anything about that, but I'm sure that they will be looking at it.
Yes, it is one of those things where there's so many different factors that can lead to mental health difficulties, and it's whether schools can be equipped to address each one of those, individual needs, like a tailored approach rather than a one standard approach that might not necessarily be as effective. Going back to your role with parents and schools, what advice would you give to how they can better support students or recognize if someone's struggling, or maybe approach, especially for parents? It's quite difficult for them to understand it.
Yeah, it's quite frightening as well. The key thing in terms of spotting the signs is looking for behavioural change, and it's really difficult, because obviously, like, I've just done 2 days training on this, so that's how long, and even then I don't feel like I've covered it. But really, you're looking for things like, a child who was really lively and outgoing is suddenly withdrawing and sitting in their room a lot. Then they've been contacting their friends before and suddenly they're not. They're losing weight, they're making excuses for not eating, or I don't know, perhaps their grades are slipping, where they've always been a really hard worker, suddenly their grades are slipping. So it's looking for that behavioural change. Parents often say to me, is particularly because obviously we know that the incidence of mental health increases as children get older. So we see it's 1 in 10 in primary school, and it goes up to 1 in 5 in secondary school struggling with mental health every year. What is the difference between kind of normal teenage behavior and kind of mental health difficulties? And I think it's just, if you're worried, I always say to parents, if you're worried because there has been a behavioural change, get help. Just go and ask somebody. Don't wait until your child is in crisis. Because you can always say, actually, do you know what? We've had now 6 months of waiting on a list and we actually think we're fine. So it's about kind of, if you notice something that's a change, you're worried, go and seek help, go and talk to somebody. There's masses of stuff. I mean, on the internet, you can access kind of pretty much everything. So in terms of, for parents and actually for teachers, it's harder for teachers to spot the behavioural change when they don't know their students so well. But again, it's looking for that slippage in grades. It's looking for that lack of attendance at school. What has changed for your students? And again, if you're worried, seek help. Always better to, step in there early, because we know, again, early intervention, the sooner we can get in and we can support, the easier it is to pull people back, and you know, support them and help them. So yeah, early intervention is really key. I think just generally checking is, or just sort of general behavior and things that we ought to do to support young people as a whole, is just making sure that we keep our channels of communication open. So checking in with teenagers, I have 3 teenagers, they are really sullen, but I know that if I check in every day with them, that they will tell me if there's something wrong, and I will know. So it's about kind of just saying, you know, how are you today? Everything okay? Or, you know, just what did you have for lunch today at school? Just anything to get a conversation, even if it's you just sit down next to them and watch some rubbish TV with them, say, oh, you know, this is kind of an interesting program. Tell me about it. Or, you know, so it's just that curiosity and keeping those channels of communication open. The other thing that's quite important is listening non-judgmentally. So rather than telling them you're being a teenager, pull your socks up, just listening to them and validating. I can see how that might make you upset. Listening is a really challenging skill that takes a lot of practice, but if you can do it, it can be really, really valuable for young people. So learning to listen properly. There's, again, loads of stuff on the internet. If you want to find out more, do go and read it. And then the other thing that for me is really important, and again, I don't have time, I spend hours talking about this, is growth mindset. So that idea of, you know, we can do stuff, we just need to practice and we need to work hard at it. And if we fail, it doesn't matter. It's just an opportunity to learn. And I think a lot of mental health issues around school come from this very fixed mindset of, if I'm a failure, I'm a failure. If I get something wrong, it's the end of the world. If I fail this test, everybody's going to hate me. But it's about actually thinking failure is an opportunity to learn, and I really want to learn and I want to get better. So those are the kind of things that I would encourage parents to look up and research and find out about. That in a nutshell is about fitting into the time. I could talk about this for ages, but yeah.
I think it definitely makes sense. I think resilience and grit and those kind of skills, they very much relate to mental health. And I think as well as reading up, for parents to read up about those skills and how you can kind of encourage that and, you know, developing your kids in that kind of way as well.
Yeah.
I guess if you haven't got anything else to say, maybe we'll move on to
I've got masses to say, but I'll save everybody the time.
We can have another webinar next month on this.
Yeah, fab. Thank you.
So I'll move the floor over to Benjamin now. So if you want to introduce yourself, a bit about your background to everybody, and then we'll go to questions.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Well, good evening. Hope you're all well. All the pressure's on. It's my turn. But lovely to meet you all and everyone that's home, obviously, who's listening. So I'm Benjamin. I'm the Health and Wellbeing Officer within the performance industry. I've been in various forms of wellbeing for just over 10 years. So originally, I worked on a one-to-one basis with people with their personal goals. And then I moved more into the corporate wellbeing side, running workshops, writing articles on various forms of wellbeing, so physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual wellbeing. And then I moved into, I guess, healthcare within the community, running the NHS checks, giving people lifestyle advice and how they could potentially change their behaviours to get the, I guess, get to the point where they are living a fulfilled life, but one that is benefiting them in the long run. Now I'm working in performing arts, which is completely different, but it's such a wonderful environment, and I'm so fortunate to be there, to be working with these incredible and very talented young people. I meant the people that I work with are between the ages about 18 to 24. And I don't have a background in acting, singing, or dance. Unfortunately, I wasn't gifted with the lovely voice, but that's it. But I've been there for a couple of years now, and the environment, it doesn't really seem like a role whatsoever. It just seems, you know, you can go into something and there's so many people that are potentially in roles that they don't fully enjoy, but they do it obviously for a valid reason. And for me, every day I walk in, and even there's going to be days where I might not be feeling on top of my game, but I walk in there and it's actually the students or even the other staff members, they can brighten my day as well. So it's definitely reciprocated. And even though I'm the health and well-being guy and people always come to me and I'm there to be the, I guess, listening ear and give them a different perspective, at the end of the day, I mean, they bring so much energy and joy to my day too. And yeah, it's just such an incredible place to be. So that's kind of my little introduction. So I'm ready for some questions.
From your experience as a health and wellbeing officer, what specific advice, whether it's you know, changing behaviours, that lifestyle, would you give for any younger listeners to this event, or even adults as well that can benefit from it?
Definitely, and touching upon what Lucinda was saying about behavioural change, it depends on, I guess, the objective at the end of the day. I find with the performing arts industry, or especially at the level that we're training people at, there's always, if you have high performance, potentially it's high anxiety alongside that. It's how you can potentially manage those emotions. How I see things, if you look at the base layer of physical well-being, so sleep, which you mentioned, physical activity, nutrition, for whatever reason, if you're really quite sleep deprived, or you haven't been eating well, and you haven't been putting the right fuel in the tank, the thing is, if you imagine having hours of sleep per night for 10 days, and then living off Haribos and energy drinks and things like that, I mean, you're going to find that your energy is going to be zapped to some extent, but that can affect your emotional well-being. And when I talk about emotional well-being, your kind of ability to manage your emotions in terms of, are you going to get frustrated by what someone has said? Are you going to feel angry? Are you going to feel upset? Or are you going to feel happy and content? But a lot of the times, not that everyone always reacts that way, but you might listen to something, you might misinterpret the information because you are feeling quite sleep deprived. And then now something's in the back of your mind and something's kind of bugging you. But then if I'm working with these young people and they've got a script to remember, or they've got a dance routine, because that's kind of the industry and how it is, they're going to be thinking about that situation that went on earlier, or they've got other external factors coming into play. So are there financial struggles? Is there something in their family life that's kind of bugging them? And then they kind of tend to lose the focus. So in terms of the mental capacity as well, focus and concentration now decreases and overall performance starts to drop. And then they start questioning, oh, well, should I be on this course or not? Am I meant to be doing this? You know, am I good enough? And then all this self-doubt comes into play. So for me, with all the people that I'm trying to work with, I'm going to try and see where they're at. And a lot of the time, the thing is, as Fitzroy was saying, when you're alone with your own thoughts, and you've really only got one perspective. And that's not always the logical perspective, it's the emotional one. You might have someone, be it a friend or a teacher, or even just a relative, who just has that logical perspective and can maybe help you see the bigger picture. And when you see the bigger picture and you know you've got that support, I mean, that's when you're going to progress on to the next stage and eventually go to the point where you're now feeling happy and content again. Because a lot of the pain that people feel, the emotional pain, is temporary, lasts for a certain period of time, and it depends on the severity and the situation you've gone through. But it can be a repeating cycle if you don't get the additional help or you reach out to someone. So it can happen to so many people. Like I said, mental health, emotional health, it doesn't really discriminate. It can be a situation that just triggers something, and it's, okay, well, I'm alone with these thoughts. What do I need to do next? And if you're not looking after your physical well-being, it kind of affects the emotional well-being, affects the mental well-being, and then spiritual well-being. And then you kind of get to a point where you're stagnating, there's no progression there. And then you start to suffer, you start to struggle. And it can be just a simple thing as the support network around you, surrounding yourself with really good, positive people that they've got your back in a way, the people that are going to be always there to lend an ear and sincere to you, and they want the best for you. And that could be, you know, your family unit, or it could be even just some really great friends. And it could be a teacher that really genuinely cares. I mean, all teachers should care. That's my opinion. And I feel like the performing arts school that I work for, everyone is on the same level. Everyone is on board with it. So there's no one that can't be approached if someone's going through a difficult time. I mean, we have me as the health and wellbeing officer, and then we have an on-site counsellor twice a week as well. But you can even talk to your tutor. It's as simple as that. And the tutor, they'll make time. And that's the thing. When you're working with people, it's always about giving the person enough time that they can feel comfortable, that they can open up and speak without judgment as well. Because I think that's where people struggle, because they think, okay, I'm going through this situation, I'm going to be judged for this. And there's a stigma attached to it, and that needs to be kind of removed, because people go through situations. We're human, we breathe, we sleep, and so on, and our heartbeat's the same, and we've got thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And it depends on how you manage them. But if you can't, if you have that nice ear that's willing to listen, then that's when you're going to get to the next level and back to where you need to be. I'm not sure if I answered the question. I just started to just ramble on. That's kind of how I work.
No, you definitely asked the question. I think it's definitely right what you said about there's kind of two elements to it. There's managing you and that basic stuff, like the nutrition, diet, fitness, as well as managing the situation. I think some people forget that there are those two elements to that. So I think that is very good for people to be aware of that. I guess as well, in your role as working in an art school, what role do you think the arts play in mental health recovery?
That's a really good question. So I would say it's the freedom of expression. Someone who does go into the arts, whether it be singing, acting, dancing, or even as a musician, for example, it's that freedom of expression, and you can channel that energy, that built up energy, in a positive way. It could be a form, I shouldn't say a distraction method as such, but if you are going through a difficult time, it might be a way that you can kind of give out that passion that you have to something and put your feeling and emotion into something and produce something that's exceptional. And when you are progressing in life, if there's another area of your life that you are struggling with and you're progressing in another area of life, I mean, for you, that's kind of a win, because it's every time that you're doing that, you're succeeding in life. And you've got a support network. Like I said, the people that go to the arts, for example, whether it be a dance kind of company or even ensemble in terms of people singing together, you know that you're all working together for the same goal, and everyone works as that team, and you don't ever feel like you're alone. And that's a really important thing, because what I love about being within the arts, especially, that everyone is really transparent. So I have been very vocal to them. I've been fully transparent, because I know if they've been through a difficult situation, some people will be in a state of denial. They feel reserved. They don't want to open up. So for me, I put myself in there and say, yep, I've been through these struggles. This is what I've done. And yeah, I think how I got into well-being, I went from a state where I was really quite unhealthy when I was young, asthma and bronchitis, overweight, and so on. And then I went to the other end of the scale, and I become obsessed with it. And then I had nervosa athletica, so a form of anorexia. And people say, oh, a male can't have that, but I did have it. And I wouldn't advise, well, I wouldn't want anyone to go through that as such, but I'm thankful that I did, because I knew kind of that dark place. And I was very fortunate that I had a really good support network around me that actually pushed me forward, because maybe I wouldn't be here, you know. So when I see that, I can pick up on the little signals people are giving to me, or the behaviors change. Because as Lucinda was saying, when the behavior changes, you look for the different little things that come up, whether someone's more reserved, or, you know, they're not as bubbly as they used to be, or they've just, yeah, kind of just distanced themselves from a group. And that can really, really help, because then you know something's going on, and then you can approach them if they feel comfortable. And what I find with the arts is there's always that safe space. You can walk into a room and nobody is kind of left alone. I mean, if they want to speak about something, everyone is there to kind of listen and offer advice, whether it be a hug, of course, not in the social distancing situation at the moment, but there's nothing that is held back, and nobody is judged for what they say as well, which is really quite good. And that's what I've loved about working with the arts, because they really genuinely care about people. Like every single one of my students, I learned a lot from them, because even though that's the way I am, it's how they care for one another, and on top of them expressing themselves through song or acting or singing, they're also growing as people, and they've got all these incredible morals that they've attained along the way that have now kind of transformed them into this unit, and now they're succeeding together. So that would be my answer.
I think we definitely see that with our charity as well, Music Relief. It does, like I say, you have that self-expression element, you have that social element where you can perform with people, or even just, showing your performance to other people. I think, Fleur, as well, you said about storytelling, you can have the creative writing elements of it with the art. So I think, yeah, it definitely does have a vital role in supporting young people, or even adults with, creative elements. So I'm going to hand the floor back over to Magdalene now.
First and foremost, I want to say wow to every single speaker. You guys have really blown me away. I've been busy taking notes. It's been phenomenal, and I want to appreciate each and every one of you. So the Q&A is officially open, but before we kind of go into the general Q&A, I'm getting not just myself, but of our MRF team members. We've got Shana, obviously, Alice is here, Olga is here, and our chair of trustees, Jonathan, is also here. I want to ask Chantel. Chantel works for another fantastic mental health charity here in Croydon called Off the Record. So maybe Fitzroy, no, Kirit, you might know of them. Chantel, you've heard so many things about what all the different fantastic speakers have been saying. And I know you came to our event last year again, so thank you. When we launched, when the young people launched their campaign, Give Youths a Voice, and they also did their film premiere. As a youth charity working with young people in regards to mental health and counseling, what are the things that you guys have noticed, especially in this year, in 2020, with COVID, and obviously with the protest as well? What are the common trends that you've noticed amongst your audiences, your clienteles?
Sure. Hi everyone. Yes, I'm Chantal. I'm from Off the Record, as Madeline mentioned. So I wear a few hats at Off the Record. I am a counsellor, both in private practice and at Off the Record, which is a young person's counselling support charity. But actually, we offer quite a few different forms of support. My role is a BAME outreach counsellor. So the idea of my role is that many young BAME people don't want to come to our offices. Our buildings are associated with counselling. There are stigmas around mental health and anyone struggling. So for them to be seen walking into our building by anyone they know, it's just terrifying for them. So actually the idea in my role is that I'll come out into the community and meet you where you are. So whether it is at a trusted church setting, a youth centre, somewhere that they are comfortable, somewhere we could have privacy and offer support. So of course with COVID, my role changed. I couldn't get to the young people. Another role I have at Off the Record is that I'm a designated counsellor for young people affected by youth violence, which is quite a problem in the borough of Croydon. So gratefully, due to COVID, there hasn't been so many incidents of youth violence as everyone has been inside. But in terms of what we've noticed with young people, sort of echoing a lot of what's been said, is loneliness, missing that connection with friends. Just to tie into beauty as well, I support a lot of young BAME men, and actually we found that they didn't have access to a barber. A lot of the hair product shops were closed, so they couldn't get access to the products that they needed for their hair. And actually a lot of young boys felt scruffy, they felt They didn't feel like they wanted to go out and be seen. They didn't want to go on FaceTime or be just physically seen by their friends, even if it was virtually. And that further isolated them because they're used to feeling, you know, pretty smart and looking good, and they didn't want to show this other side of them. So we found that was quite a big thing with boys as well. Yeah, so loneliness was a big thing. Anxiety was also a big thing, and family conflicts, because of course we're stuck at home with our family. Already strained relationships became even more strained and even more difficult. And actually we found that a lot of young people who were previously accessing our face-to-face services couldn't access virtual work because of lack of means, especially in those households where they might not have access to the internet, they might not have access to computers or phones. So therefore there were many barriers, many extra barriers that perhaps we took for granted before COVID. So we, as Off the Record, as a predominantly face-to-face service, we had to really try and act quickly, and we put together, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with our services or some of the things that we put together, but we had to really think out of the box, and we created for example, we created the No Trim Challenge. I'm not sure if any of you saw that, but we got local faces, so people who were quite known in Croydon, adolescent workers people that were really well connected with a lot of young boys, to get involved with, you know, doing videos, showing off their hair growth, really embracing their hair growth. And we encouraged the young boys to send us a sort of before COVID and after COVID, you know, video, picture of before COVID video of you know, them embracing their hair growth now. And if they did that, we agreed to pay for their first haircut after COVID was finished. And, you know, that was really well engaged with, really embraced, and actually really positive. We've done lots of other things. What else have we done? One thing we're working on now at the moment is a wellbeing package for those young people who can't access any virtual support. So we're going to put together a box full of potential, you know, it could be quite sensory, you know, fidget key rings for anxious people, mindfulness colouring. We're going to put in scented candles or scented putty that they can play with, gratitude or affirmation cards, you know, things that they can really engage with, things that that they don't need their internet access to, they don't need to leave their house with for, and other information about anxiety and depression and other key issues they may be dealing with. So we're trying to be quite creative to really meet young people, and actually just really aware that now, due to the times, we have to engage in a variety of ways. There's no blanket approach here, is there? Young people can't come into our buildings. We can't meet young people necessarily where they are. So what next? You know, really trying to stick with the times, I guess.
Great, thank you so much, Chantel. Okay, so I'm conscious of time, so please, once we ask question, if we can just kind of keep it as quite short and concise as possible. I want to go back to Madam Mayor, and when you spoke about, obviously, a family who were living in an accommodation that was far away from a park, and mom was studying, and then obviously COVID came into being and lockdown, and so everybody was on top of each other. In your opinion, and I guess this is, I'm asking Madam Mayor, but obviously anyone else can also answer, but I want Madam Mayor to answer first. In your opinion, what is the importance of, I guess you mentioned park, what's the importance of park or some form of open space in such an instance? Because you rightly mentioned that no adults can actually make comparison to when the previous lockdown, when there was a pandemic in, I think, in the 20s or so. There is no living person that can make that kind of say, oh yeah, I remember such a time. So what's the importance of space in regards to mental health?
I think if space, there's so many different angles to it. I think a lot of people have already touched on the vital importance of beauty to mental health. And obviously the natural world is a very significant and vital form of access to beauty. So from the park specifically would be the obvious from connection there. It also comes with an opportunity for physical health, which, as we, again, various panel members already touched on, is vital for mental health. But also, I think it links in with any opportunity they might have had, even if they're not supposed to be interacting with them, just to see another human being. If all you're seeing is the same four people, and there's any tensions built up, which is natural, what you need is that variety of human contact. And you're not allowed to, you were not allowed and shouldn't have been in contact with other people during lockdown, and it was vital you didn't. But even the sight of other people is so important. And it's not a park specific issue, but one example I'd give for myself was I did some volunteering in my ward for a food bank collection point. And I came back after having done my second shift, and I was on this absolutely unbelievable high. Really, my husband went, "What is it with you? I mean, you've been at a food bank. One thing you're not supposed to come back is happy, because you really should be kind of feeling the pain." I said, "Don't get me wrong, I am really devastated for the people that are in this situation. But today I got to see two people I know, just two people that I happen to know really well, and the wards happened to turn up on the shift I was doing. And the kind of sense of well-being that I got from having had that, which I hadn't had for so long, was really, really powerful. And I think at that point, I think I understood that's why I focused in my speech so much about the importance of from that kind of human contact side to it, because I think I understood it in that moment in a way I think I'd ever understood it before. And then I tied it in with from my own experience. And again, this was about being ability to open up. One of my problems with my recovery when I was ill was that I kept thinking and convincing and telling people that I was better. And the weird thing is, for that precise moment when I was saying it, I'm quite good at convincing. I'm a politician. I'm quite good at convincing myself of things in the moment. And I'd say, I am on the mend. I'm feeling better. And then the next day, I would just not be able to get out of bed again. So I think, and that's the point about that kind of person that will just keep having those conversations, having those engagements like you were talking about. And while I'm speaking, Fitzroy, what an extraordinary man. Thank you so much for telling your story.
Indeed. And Fitzroy, I think I must give you a virtual clap. I think that's powerful for just being able, not many people are able to do so. My next question, I guess, is for both for Fleur and Benjamin, who are both working within the school setup in regards to young people, and most especially for music and the arts, obviously being music relief. What I know Shana touched on spoke about, she asked you yourself, Benjamin, about the importance of the arts. But Fleur, you talk about storytelling, and music and the arts, they're all part of the creative, all under that creative industry. So my main question to either one of you can answer this question, in regards to young people and their interpretation when they are doing something creative. Is there a difference? You notice a difference when they are like in the zone, whether they're dancing or singing or storytelling or poetry or spoken words? What do you notice at that time when they're in that zone on the stage or in that center place that they're doing that, when they finish and they come out of it and they're not, do you notice a difference first and foremost? And what is that difference? And how are you able to get them to connect with, I guess, those two personalities so that when there is an issue, they're able to kind of get back to that zone, if that's helpful? I don't know if that question makes sense.
Yeah, I think you're getting at something really, really important there, which is to have a focused, sustained, peaceful project to do, where you can work on something over quite a long period of time. So it might be something that you're working on for a few months, and it's something that you can pick up and be creative, and then you put that thing down, but you always know it's there again for you to be able to pick it up. And that is when you have a creative practice, and that's so important. And I think probably what Ben will agree with, which is that with storytelling, you see, when you work on a story and then you tell the story and it might only take about 10 minutes and then it's over. So the important thing isn't so much the performance. The really important thing is engaging in the creative practice every single day, so a little bit every day. And if you do a little bit every day, then you look back and see the progress that you've made after just a couple of weeks, and then you're in it, and then that's your thing, and that's what you do. And it's so wonderful to have that, because all kinds of opportunities start to open. So for me, the importance of you know, all I can do is tell stories. So for me, trying to save the world, I just have to save the world through stories. And so the stories that I'm really interested in working on at the moment are stories to do with the natural environment, and, you know, tying into this whole idea of the importance of sort of going to the park and seeing the park. There's so much to discover there. There's so much folklore. There are so many amazing hidden herbs and weeds and trees and things. And there's so much magic there. So I would like to encourage people to try and tie their creative activity into nature as well, because it's very rewarding. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Ben, do you want to add anything, or your side?
I can always add on, but actually, in terms of what Fleur said, I mean, it was completely spot on. I would agree with it 100%. And I think, you know, when I'm looking at all these young people that are coming through, is that sense of achievement more than anything, and the journey that you go through to get to where they are at the end of the process. So a lot of the times, I suppose, if they've got other external factors kind of bothering them, and they've got a piece of work that they need to really focus on, is at each stage they're being recognized for their ability more than anything. And when you recognize for ability and someone says, you know, you've got that positive reinforcement saying to you, wow, that was incredible, can't believe you've done that. You're like, I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, for the majority of people, when someone's recognized for what they do and celebrated for that, it does give you that boost of energy that you're looking for. It just makes you feel like, okay, well, I'm on the right path, and this is really going to benefit me in the long run. So when I've worked with these people that are, you know, going through difficult times, and they've created this masterpiece. I call it a masterpiece because I'm such a huge cheerleading fan at the end, at the side. And when I watch them in a show and everything's come together and they collaborated on this marvelous piece of work, and I'm just thinking the stage they were before that, or they were struggling at something, and they've kind of looked back, and it's made them realize actually what they're really truly capable of if they can put their mind to it and work with people who are kind of on the same level and actually who have a similar mindset. But it all comes down to that support network again, is if there's days where, you know, Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, everything's going great, and then Thursday, it's not a great day. But it's having that person on the side who can pick you up and keep going. And when you go through those kind of stumbling blocks, and then you come out the other end and you've accomplished this incredible thing, whatever it might be, whether it be like a show reel or so on, it makes you really feel proud of yourself. I mean, I've seen that, and you can just see the energy change, how they carry themselves, and they're like, wow, I can't believe I got through this difficult stage in my life, and I still persevered, and look where I am now. I mean, for me, I can just see it, how their energy changes. And a lot of them have said to me, you know, if they didn't have the arts, in a way, they'd be doing something that wasn't as productive, or they'd be struggling with their own mental health. And it's just one of those industries that I feel like it's so giving in a way.
Most definitely. You're definitely preaching to the converted, that's for sure. That's for sure. It's really when you
that's kind of my view.
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you so much. When you think of music and you think of the creative arts, I can speak on it for years and years, and it's definitely something that is I feel like everyone should be creative in one way or the other. Lucinda, I'm muting myself. Lucinda, I loved everything you said, but I really want to just kind of ask a quick question, still mindful of time, because I want to come to Kirit quickly. In regards to parents, what else can parents do apart from, like you mentioned, watching a film with the children, how asking them how they are? What else can they do? How much more can they become even more engaged with their children, bearing in mind that when the children, they're younger, obviously you have to be as more engaging than when they begin to grow up. So how much more do parents need to be doing to be engaged with their children and ensuring that they are engaged with the schools as well, to support that child, to give that child a kind of like a rounded support from home to school to kind of friendship?
That's a really good question. Cool. Okay, so what happens is generally is that in primary school, people are quite engaged with their children's education because they're coming into school, they're dropping off, you get all of that informal on the playground chat, and then they go to secondary school and it's like, man, they're teenagers, I can let them go, don't have to be involved, teachers do it. And there's an element of stepping back, and also that idea of like, they're teenagers, they can just get on with it. And what we see with teenagers is that kind of in my experience is like little kids, you're there, you just have to be there all. I mean, during lockdown, I sat there, I was like, thank God I've got teenagers, because, you know, when you've got little kids, it's like 24/7, they're around your feet, like, mummy, come and play. Teenagers, they're off listening to their music. But when they need parenting now, and they need your full attention, and there's no, you know, it's so vital that in that kind of 10-15 minutes when there's a kind of moment, and we had in this house some real moments of, you know, being a parent and having to be there and really listen. So I think that's the thing, is just to be aware that when they need you, just to be there for them, drop everything and just listen and really validate their feelings, because it's very easy with teenagers to just say they're just being teenagers, but actually to really say, I can really see how that might affect you. In terms of supporting school, I think, you know, schools are desperate to support parents, and I think in this time particularly, but they find it really difficult because the communication channels are very tricky. So, you know, definitely keep the communication channels with school open. I know that there's, at the moment, I don't know about anybody else, but I feel like overwhelmed. We've got kids at 2 different schools and overwhelmed with emails. So it is about reading it, but just, you know, how can you keep those channels open? Who do you know the main contact points in the school to go to? So, you know, most schools, a child will have a tutor, so their form tutor might be your first point of contact. It might be a head of year, it might be a head of house, depending on how your school's set up. It might be a special educational needs coordinator if you've got a child with special educational needs. So making sure you know the communication pathways, and not necessarily going straight to the headmaster, but, you know, again, talking if you have concerns, if you have worries, you know, don't be afraid to approach the school. They may not have the answer, but quite often we hear that parents are really worried about something and they're like, well, maybe I'm just being a parent, just worried about, it's not really anything. And it's not until the school approach them and they say, we're really concerned, and the parents say, oh, you know, so absolutely have that conversation, because it, you know, it can be so reassuring just to talk to another adult who knows your child. So, you know, the school, I mean, someone said it earlier that, you know, teachers care, they really do. Schools care about your kids. They want the best for your children. And so just to keep those communication channels open. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much. And being a parent as well, I definitely know, ranging from 4 different age groups, you having to just kind of know how to deal with them at different times. So with Kirit, I'm really interested in regards to when you were speaking, you were talking about the policies and ensuring that there's that joined up approach, because one thing I've seen is that there's loads of talk, but not many people are talking, but not many people are walking the walk. And to really walk the walk, you really have to, in a sense, figuratively, pull up your sleeves and really dig deep. And as a grassroots organization, and I keep shouting and talking about that because that's where the strength is, because you're embedded within the community. You may not be serving the masses, but you are serving people on a one-to-one basis. So it means you're limited with the amount of people you're serving, but you're making real impact in that one person or those 2 people or 3 people. For those smaller organizations who may not be able to tick all the boxes and say, yes, we had thousands of people walk through our door at the end of the year, how can their inputs be included within policies, that governmental policies that will ensure that everybody, both BAME and non-BAME young people, well, I'm speaking from the young people's perspective, being a young people's organization, can have the support that they need? Because too many people have the I guess the experience. Many of us are experienced, many of us have the expertise, but maybe because we don't fit some of those boxes, are kind of being ignored. So I want to really understand what more can be done.
Okay, well, firstly, you do have, from a youth point of view, you have some very good youth organizations. So you've got young minds who work on mental health, right? The challenge is that from a national body to a local level, the disconnect is there. And then when it comes to how do young people, particularly from the communities that we're trying to serve, how are they actually engaged to get their voices heard with those organizations? So when those organizations need to be reaching out more to grassroots organizations through different mechanisms. You've got through the school system, you've got youth parliaments, so there is the mechanism there. But then the challenge, as I said, is that we need to ensure those young people who do need that service and support, their voices somehow need to be heard by the local politicians. They need to be heard by our MPs. So luckily, our MP, Jonathan Ashworth, MP, he's also shadow minister. We've made sure that where we are, our organisation is based, is in his constituency. So we've made sure that he knows about what we're doing, what some of the challenges are. But no, I'm not criticising NHS England or Public Health England. They have systems in place. So they've got the public patient voice. They've got NHS. Have got a youth ambassador, youth council. So there is mechanisms. But what we need to be doing, and organisations like yours could also be looking at when it comes to issues that you're trying to address. How are they actually reaching, and is the diversity there at that level where? And I only know because I've been challenging all of these organizations from a patient. I'm a patient of diabetes. So I've been knocking on all of these doors locally, regionally, nationally to say, where are your patient voice for diabetes? And it was non-existent. Kirit, we can't, they're hard to reach. I said, I don't buy this hard to reach nonsense. I say you're treating us as we're easy to ignore because we just pose certain challenges of communication or language, but we know where we are because we've been here all the time. So I think from your question, we need to work joined up, but we are going to see a pandemic of mental health. Bereavement, some people mentioned about bereavement. In this COVID situation, Leicester, we've been locked down 3 times, but people have lost loved ones. They've not been able to, certain faith communities have not been able to say their final goodbyes, the rituals. So that's having a real impact. So I think we need to get our decision makers and NHS and the public to ensure more resources are coming to deal with the pandemic around mental health, around, bereavement, and for young people as well. I'm glad to say that there is more resources coming in for schools to help them address mental health from a primary level, because it's more resources are coming because the CAMS services, as somebody said, huge waiting lists. Our communities can't afford to be told you've got a year waiting list, 2-year waiting list for specialists. Some of the work we do is try and get people the diagnosis that they need, but that's been a great challenge. So I know time is short, but I think it's important that you've got. I'm glad the mayor's here, and I think there is the local, through your network as well. I think we need to be shouting and singing more about the work that needs to happen, not what we're doing, because we can promote that. We need to be more visible on social media, which is great, which is what we're doing. But we need allies. We need to create allies to talk about. So it's not just us as a BAME-led mental health charity talking about the work we're doing, we need to have other people talking about the need. And finally, you know, we've got an opportunity. The Black Lives Matters has enabled us to actually put race back on the agenda. And whether we like it or not, a lot of the institutions that are the decision makers who are there have always had a problem with institutional racism. So we have to now, as organizations, as communities, as even decision makers, we need to work together, because it's not about blaming or shaming. It's about saying, okay, for too long, certain communities have not had the power to have their voices, have been failed by the system. So we need to now address it. So that's my parting words.
Thank you so much, Kirit. And time is well spent, but there's so many questions that I'm sure we could all ask. But I just want to say, you know, for each and every one of us who have actually come online today, and for all the speakers, and including Chantel herself, Chantel, I really appreciate it, because this is a conversation that is not just starting, it's something that is a continued conversation, but it's not just about talking and doing nothing. It's about talking and then implementing something. So from my takeaway from everything that everybody has spoken is that there is no one size fits all. There's different aspect of things that we all need to be doing, either from the political aspect of things, from school aspects, from local community groups aspects as well, and just kind of looking at it from the parental view, from schools view, from individuals, from every one of us. We all have a part to play, because COVID has impacted not just young people, but every single person in one way or the other. And so for that, I really, really do appreciate each and every one of you. Madam Mayor, thank you so much for taking your time out this evening. And for Kirit and Fitzroy, thank you so much all the way from Leicester. Thank you, Chantel, Lucinda, Benjamin, Fleur. Thank you so much to Shana, to Alice, to Olga. Thank you. These guys have worked tirelessly.